Hey everyone, here today give you a real quick, hopefully 5-10 minute mini lecture here on European exploration and the New World. So here we go, let's get started. So there you go, you look at a map on the right there. That was the map of the known world to the Europeans. Before Columbus went ahead and sailed the ocean blue in 1492. And if you look really close, you can see for the most part they have a pretty good idea of Europe, what Europe looks like. But then if you look at Africa, you can, I guess, kind of see the shape, but there's still some obvious discrepancies there. And then like Asia's just this gigantic blob, and there's really no, you really can't tell any of the features about Asia. So the world was pretty much an unknown for Europeans prior to exploration. And so we're going to focus today on, why did the Europeans start their exploration? Who are some of the big dogs that do the exploring? And what are the consequences of that exploration? Okay, so let's talk about why did they do it. So what are the reasons? Okay, I think the biggest reason is they need trade routes. Okay, after the Crusades, the Europeans come into contact with all these great Asian products, spices, silk, all that good stuff, and they want it. Okay, the problem is though is that it costs a lot of money. It's really expensive to get silk and spices from the Far East because it changes hands so many times with all these middlemen that the cost gets higher and higher and higher. For instance, when you go to a store and you buy a shirt, like you go to Kohl's, Kohl's didn't make that shirt. Okay, someone else made that shirt. Okay, and so the people that make that shirt, they sell Kohl's that shirt for a profit. Okay, Kohl's then needs to make money on that shirt, so then Kohl's turns and sells it to you for a profit. Okay, and so you're paying a much higher price for that shirt. Okay, because it has to exchange different hands. And so the Europeans are going to try to cut out the middlemen and just go and get the products directly instead of having to rely on some of the Muslims and the Indians, for instance, to get all their products. And so they're going to want to try to find a way to India and the East Indies, which was considered Indonesia. So basically this area right in here is where they want to be. All right. Another reason why they want to explore is for the simple glory of it, for fame. Also, there is a very big interest in this time at spreading Christianity. We have the Reformation going on, and so there's a very big interest in spreading Protestantism. And there's also an interest in the Catholics to continue to spread Catholicism. So there's a big competition in spreading Christianity at this time. And then also there's just a lot of new technology that's going to allow explorers to go into the unknown. Whereas in the past, it wasn't, you couldn't just go into open ocean because you had no idea of knowing where you are. Now we have technology like the compass and the sextant, which allows the sailors to kind of know where they are, what direction they're going, what is their longitude, what is their latitude. And so it's much more possible and feasible for them to go ahead and do this exploring. Okay? Okay, I guess a couple things we need to talk about real quickly here is that Columbus wasn't even the first European to discover North America. We actually know that the Vikings were the first to reach around 1000 AD, so about 500 years before Columbus landed in the Americas. Leif Ericson and the Vikings actually were there. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We don't know exactly what the Vikings were doing there. We know that they stopped there, they hung out a little bit. We know they didn't make any permanent settlements in the Americas. Okay, and what we do know is that the Vikings, who are like kind of from Scandinavia here, so Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark. We know they settle Iceland. We know they settle Greenland. And then once they're here, it's really not that far of a jump to Canada and the northern tip of Maine here for the United States. And what we think happened is that the Vikings who lived in Greenland, Greenland doesn't have a lot of trees and stuff. We think that the Vikings would actually go to Canada for lumber and supplies and stuff like that, and then come back to Greenland. It begs the question, why didn't they just settle in Canada? We'll never know, I guess. All right. Anyways, Columbus is the first European to document the Americas. He's actually an Italian-born sailor who sails for the Spanish, and his goal is to find a trade route to Asia. So while the Portuguese have decided to go around Africa, Columbus and the Spanish think you can get there by sailing west. And so Columbus makes 4 voyages to the New World. and he never really realizes where he is. He always thinks he's in Asia somewhere, and he's looking for all those spices and stuff like that, and he's frustrated that he never finds it. Okay, so in his first voyage, he basically lands in the Caribbean. He makes contact with some of the inhabitants. Columbus has gotten a lot of criticism for his treatment of inhabitants. He enslaves them. He makes them mine for gold. He unknowingly spreads disease to the peoples of the Caribbean. And we know that hundreds of thousands of these Caribbean natives actually die of diseases like smallpox because Columbus and the Europeans spread these diseases unknowingly. But anyways, he makes 4 voyages. The last 2, he kind of goes and hangs out with South America a little bit, maps parts of Central America, but he never really grasped, like I said, what he has discovered. However, people will come after him, and they will, I guess, grasp what he has discovered, and they will come to understand that the world's a bigger place, and there is a huge landmass the Europeans, until now, basically knew nothing about. And the effects of future European exploration are going to be huge. The first, I guess, effect is that major civilizations in the Americas, like the Aztecs and the Inca, will be completely and utterly destroyed. And more importantly, something called the Columbian Exchange will begin to take place. And the Columbian Exchange is basically this massive biological, I guess, transformation of the world as we know it. Even though we have one planet, back then there were really like 2 worlds. You had the Americas, and you had Eurasia and Africa, and these 2 large land masses were separated by water, and there was no contact between the 2. And so the ecosystems and the germs and the animals and the plants developed in isolation of one another. And once there's interaction, there's going to be some huge consequences. I mean, once Eurasia and Africa come into contact with the Americas, we see the pace of extinction going up and up and up. Okay? And so, for instance, when the Europeans come to the Americas, they bring things with them like citrus fruits, grapes, bananas, sugarcane, honeybees, cattle, sheep, pigs, wheat, rice, barley, coffee, olives, onions. All these things were not in the Americas until the Europeans brought them there. In addition to that, the Europeans also brought things like smallpox, the flu, measles, malaria, whooping cough. These were diseases that did not exist in the Americas. So people didn't get the flu in the Americas until the Europeans brought the flu there. The Americas never had people who had the cold because that didn't exist until the Europeans brought it there. Okay? And unfortunately what happens is that the Native Americans have no resistance to European diseases, and so it's estimated that around 95% of Native Americans are killed off by European diseases and African diseases and Asian diseases. Okay, so one of the biggest consequences of European exploration is you have these 2 massive continents of North America, South America, and pretty much all the inhabitants are killed. The majority of them are killed by diseases. I mean, look around the room. When you look around the room in your classroom today, the majority of the people that you see are originally from where? Most likely Europe or Africa. And obviously, there's not as many Asians in America, but there's definitely some Chinese, Japanese, Pacific Islander and stuff. But there's very few Native Americans left on these continents because they were wiped out by diseases. Okay, and the Europeans also then brought back goods with them back to Europe. Okay, the Europeans got things like let's see here. We got potatoes, which becomes a huge crop for the Irish. Tomatoes go back to Europe. Can you imagine Italian food before tomatoes? So before the Columbian Exchange, the Italians didn't even have tomatoes to make all their great foods. Things like corn and vanilla and beans and pineapples, tobacco. All those things are sent back to Europe. Okay? And so we are still struggling with this global world that we live in. Even to this day, we can't stop the spreading of invasive species. Just like back in the Columbian Exchange, they couldn't stop the spreading of all these biological plants and animals being exchanged. Even in Wisconsin, we have issues with invasive species like the giant snakehead, or the flying carp, or the goby, or zebra mussels, and that really messes with our ecosystems. It messes with the food chains, and it could change our lakes and our rivers and our trees and our plants forever. And a lot of these things are becoming extinct because of that exchange. All right. So, anyways, we're going to focus a little bit more on this today. So hopefully this helped you, I guess, understand the exploration, but more importantly, the effects of exploration.